Oh, wow. Hey there, folks. I guess today the scheduled event actually worked. I'm out of words. I really don't know what to say. I wasn't prepared for this, to be honest. I thought that it again won't work as supposed to. So I prepared a speech about how much Facebook Live sucks and so on. And then it suddenly works, which is, of course, great, but also a big surprise. But yeah, I'm really happy that it works as it should. I will try to copy the settings from this show to the next one so that every time a scheduled event would actually work. And I'm more than happy that it did actually. So yeah, again, it was very, very surprising to me, but I am happy that that it worked so fine. So I already see some of you in the comments. Hello Mario, hello Chiachi. I see we have our viewers already, so that I think that we can directly jump into our official greeting and start going through the projects. Hello Leslie. So hey there folks, today is Tuesday, September the 19th, 2023. My name is Theodor Vladov, and this is the third episode of Keeping It Realistic. As you know, in this show, we are going through all of your projects that have been posted in the Chaos Campus Facebook group, pointing out their strengths, but also talking about their weaknesses and probably solutions and ideas how to improve them. Today's show is going to be a long one because there are tons of projects to talk about. So I think that we can actually jump right in. But first of all, let me ask you, how are you? I hope you're fine. I hope you had a good start of the week. Also, I hope you're safe because unfortunately we had some really nasty natural disasters. So those of you who live in the areas like Morocco where there was an earthquake or Libya where there were massive floods, I hope that they didn't affect you and your loved ones and that you are safe. And with this being said, let's buckle up and jump in straight to the very first project. In today's case, the very first project is one by Alyona. She says Blair Gory House visualization is made by her. It's made in 3ds Max, Corona and Photoshop, and it is a work done according to a reference. Let's take a look at the reference. Let me first open Alyona's work so that you can see it in a full screen, and then we will take a look at the reference. And if you compare both images, you will see that Alyona did an amazing, really amazing job at reproducing this reference. So first of all, she chose a really, really nice and elegant image to recreate, and then she did an outstanding job at matching it up to the point where it is almost difficult to point out which one is the original and which one is her recreation, which I think says everything that we need to know about this work. Presentation wise, the only thing that I'm missing, because you already also uploaded a clay model, which I always am very more than happy to see. Presentation wise, the only thing I'm missing is the reason why you decided to go with this project. But apart from that, you see the modeling. There isn't a ton of modeling here, but what is there is done really nicely. There is a lot of beautiful, beautiful detail. You see in the areas here, you see it down here on the deck. Material wise, again, it is a difficult project to pull off material wise, because seen from afar, it looks like this building is made of just something grayish or whitish. But if we take an up close look in Alyona's recreation, but also the original, you will see that what we actually have is this concrete with its very, very subtle structure to it. We have these concrete blocks that are overpainted, that also have this very subtle structure to them, and Alyona managed to properly present both materials. Even though, again, from afar they look very, very similar or more like different shades of gray. Lighting-wise or framing-wise and composition, I would say the credit mostly goes to the original photographer. And if we analyze the original image, we can do it looking at Alyona's job, because again, she made an outstanding job at recreating it. You will see three things. First of all, the choice of sky. So why did the photographer choose to take this photo on a day like this, with the sky being more or less just milky and white? In my opinion, this is because the sky, as it is right now, just adds to the different shades of gray, so it is more or less light gray. If it was a blue sky or some sunset sky or something, it wouldn't look as good, because it will add a whole new layer of coloring, a whole new compositional element to look at, which the photographer didn't want to have. So currently, the sky is more or less a background, so that this scene can stick out more. Also, with a lighting like this, an overcast lighting, we don't have overexposure, we don't have areas that are too dark, and the representation of the materials and the colors is very, very authentic. Framing-wise, I think this is a very sweet framing with some sweet storytelling to it, because it's not something very special or super beautiful. It's just the area where the man-built structure, the artificial structure of the building, meets the very organic structure of the surrounding nature. And this small path here that Alyona managed to wonderfully recreate tells a small story about how you can leave this deck and you can just go into the nature. So all in all, I would say this is one great recreation of a very beautiful, very elegant scene, and Alyona did a great job with it. And to you folks, in the meantime, I also see Leslie and my mom and Fatia and Janita and Ankita Gupta. Hello everybody, glad that you're here. In the meantime, let me ask you, have you tried recreating a project the same way Alyona did here? So as exact as possible. And if so, how did it turn out? Did it turn out as you imagined it to be, or you couldn't really manage to recreate it very exactly? Also, one more thing, you see how Alyona points out her reference. And I think this is the right and honest thing to do. Because I see lots of artists who actually try to hide that they have actually worked with a reference and recreated it. And I think the reason for that is that they think that this will diminish their effort and this will make people look at their work with different eyes, which I don't know, maybe it is true to a certain extent, even though I would say that recreating existing architectural photography is one of the greatest exercises there is in order to test your skills, to learn new stuff. And like almost every good artist that I know of has done it and still does it. I do it. And there is absolutely nothing wrong to this. So from my side, I warmly recommend you to do something like this, also to exercise. Let me see the answers. Mario says, I really like the results from the zine. The zine, Art Daily, these are the most common sources for recreations like this. And by the way, Alyona, looking at the other images of this really nice house by East Top Architects, I think that you can actually continue and actually rework or continue recreating also the interior spaces and other parts of this really, really beautiful minimalist house. Hello, Helen. Leslie says the results were okay, but I couldn't create all the materials correctly, especially the multi-materials. Well, then you know what you have to exercise more on and what you watch tutorials on and just exercise in your free time. But again, you see, just by trying to recreate something, you learn something new and something about yourself as an artist. And Chi says, I haven't tried to recreate photos yet. Well, do so. It really, really helps you a lot. So now let's continue with Janita's project. He says, lighting and mood. This is another practice during my free time. While I was watching a render camp tutorial, I found this model, so I decided to try out to give a different vibe to this. Model credits by the original artist, which is render camp. Lighting, decors, and textures were added by me. Software used is 3ds Max and V-Ray. All the materials are from Quixel, and the post-production is done in Photoshop. Thank you. So Janita, this is a really good, very informative description of your work. So we don't not only know which software you used, but also the material sources, the reason behind this project being done by you as an exercise. Also, you credited the original creators of the scene, which again is the right and honest thing to do. So please, to all of you, do so. This is the right thing. Design-wise, I think this is a very elegant design that you created here. I think that all of its elements fit together nicely. I can imagine this be a furniture photo shoot of some sort. Let's say the photographers who wanted to make a professional photo session of that furniture, they just went around and found this old abandoned luxury building, and then they placed their furnitures on the tables and the couch and this wall art inside and started taking photos. This is what I imagine when I see this, and I think this is something really nice. Materials and assets, again, are really well chosen, fit together well, and lead to a harmonious final result. The modeling, I think we can skip in this specific case because the model was a ready-made one, and the assets that you have chosen, we already talked about, they're pretty nice. Material-wise, the materials are great. It's visible they come from Quixel because, you know, of all the weathered effects to them, all the wear, the peeling paint on the wall. But the material looks awesome. The wall material I like a lot. What I don't like that much is how by the edge you have a lot of wear on the material when it comes to the wall that we look upon. But around the corner, it's more or less a spotless wall, right? So try to achieve a bit more corner continuity with your texturing and mapping. The floor material is again another very nice material, as most materials from the Quixel library are. In this case, however, at least seen from my perspective, this is clearly an outdoor exterior material. I have never seen tiles like this used in an interior scene before. Maybe it's just missing knowledge on my side. So if you have seen something like this, if you have experienced it, then just let this point be. The frames on those doors, I think, are a bit over the top. The texture itself is a good one. It looks a bit stretched on this frame to the left, but generally it's a good material. But if we compare it to the wall, for example, you see there are areas of the wall where the wall is worn down, when it's really the whole color is peeled off and it just looks bad. But there are also areas where it's just dirty, nothing more than that. And if we take a look at the materials here, you will see that it's like worn out absolutely everywhere, which I think is a bit too much. So maybe in order to counter this, try to work with the Corona mix material, where you mix this material with a clean one, and then take something like a dirt map or a noise map in order as a mask for the dirt material, so that you have dirt only in certain areas. Maybe you can use a Corona AO material or a Corona curvature so that you have dirt more around the corners, for example. Lighting wise, I think when we take a look at this shot, at the main shot, I think that the lighting here is really nice, even though it is actually contre-jour. I think that most of you know what this means. For those who don't, the term comes from French. It means against the day, so it's a shot against the light. So despite the contre-jour here, it is actually very moody, very nice, and still very properly lit. Now, when it comes to the second shot, I have mixed feelings about this, to be honest, because I like this color contrast with a cold color on the left side and a warm color on the right side, but I don't think that it is really balanced. So if we analyze the lights, this one on the right side is actually pretty nice. To me, it suggests something like a fireplace, which we don't see, but which we can acknowledge through this light that it makes. The left one, however, it's so strong, it's almost overexposed in these areas that it is difficult to figure out what kind of lighting this is and where it comes from. And then there is also this light here in the corner, which comes from something like a lamp, I cannot say. But again, it's not really balanced. I will gladly show you a project of mine that I did. It was my Christmas card in 2019, I think, where you see a similar situation. So you have the couch here, and to the right there is this very warm light suggesting a fireplace, and to the left there is this coldish light suggesting the exterior light coming from the outside in the winter, which is cold, obviously. And so you see that there is a certain balance to them. The one light to the left is strong, but also the one to the right is strong too. Also, if we go back to your image, you know the photographic rules and how the most exposed area usually is the area that we first look at when we view an image. So in this case, the first thing I look at is the frame on the door to the left, which obviously is a secondary object and is not the main eye catcher of this scene. It's about this furniture or about the whole scene, but not about this frame here, right? So if you compare to this image, not that this one is a perfect image and everything about it is awesome, but if you compare it, first of all, you have this balance between the lights, and then you see that the brighter spots, like on this cushion here or here or here, the brighter spots are in the middle of the image where I want the people to look at. So let's go back here. Maybe with a lighting setup like this, you can actually just zoom in here and make a close-up on this area. But because with a setup like this, it's almost like studio lighting, and I can imagine that you can then achieve a pretty nice close-up. And as for the last version of it, I probably like it even more than the second one. On the one hand, it looks a bit like a smartphone filter, but on the other hand, you only have one light source here, so it's more like film noir or something, and I personally enjoyed more than the second shot. And generally speaking, about the framing too, I think that the framing is good the way it is. The whole framing could be shifted, or the whole cropping could be shifted a bit to the right, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe it's imperfect the way it is. It is good just the way it is. So just leave it be and roll with it. And in conclusion, I would say that this is a really sweet exercise, and you seemed to were really able to test everything that you wanted to test, like materials and the furnishing and composition, and you did a really good job with it. And to you folks in the comments, so obviously Janita practiced some lighting, some texturing, some composition here. And what is the next thing that you feel like practicing as a next? Like Leslie should be practicing multi-materials, and what about you, the rest of you? And hello Alessio, glad to see you in the comments. While I'm waiting for your answers, I will scroll already to Irina's project, which is one that we will be talking a lot about because there are lots of points to consider about this project. And since I don't see any comments so far, I will just jump right into this project and read what Irina has written. She says, "Hey, this is my first project of exterior for the cottage houses developer. I suppose there are many mistakes. We'll wait. Your comments would be good on the live show as well." Here we are. It's done in 3ds Max, Corona 8 and Photoshop. So Irina, this is a really nice description because it provides the type of project. So it's a commercial one. We know the software that you used. And what's more, it shows a great attitude on your side because you say, hey, there are probably many mistakes, comment on them, let me learn. This is what I hear when I read what you have written here. And I think an attitude like this is the attitude of a great artist, very honestly speaking. When it comes to the images, I also like that they are different. In a situation like this, while we still have the small preview, most artists will just have the same staffage as they have on the first image, like all the people, the kids, and so on, and there's the same cars. They will just swap the HDRI or the lighting for an evening lighting, but keep all the assets because it saves time. But in your case, you actually went out of your way, removed all the assets of the day scene and actually added new assets for a night scene. And I think this shows, again, great attitude on your side and how much you actually care. So let's continue. Let's take a look at the images first, maybe. So this is the day scene with a lot going on it. And then we have the evening scene, which is way more laid back with a lot less going on it. Design-wise, I don't know if this is your design, the houses themselves, but when we talk about the images only, so the design of your scenes, I also think that it is a great detail that during the day you actually have a lot more going on compared to the night. Because I think this is authentic. Usually, if we take a look outside during the day, a lot more people are around, a lot more cars are on the way. But in the evening or at night, all of this is way less. And I think that just by designing your scene, you make a very right move by doing so. When it comes to the modeling, I think that the scene leaves very solid first impression. There are lots of elements that you have added. There are lots of buildings that seem to be properly built, especially for the distance we view them from. Also, you have used rear windows. Now, a lot of artists in a situation like this just make a small black frame and a glass plane, and that's everything, which is, let me tell you, this is still recognizable even from afar, and it doesn't look good. So even if it's not a real bird view, like from an airplane or something, try to work as much as possible with real windows or real assets, because despite the distance, it really shows. Upon closer inspection, however, there are some things that aren't that great. First of all, let's take a look at the curbs. You see, the curbs are currently a bit of a trip hazard because they are actually higher than the walkway, which shouldn't be the case. They should have the same level. Also, the curbs usually aren't one continuous geometry. They are partitioned, so my suggestion is to add some partitioning to them every 1 or 1.5 meters, for example. Also, the interiors, occasionally there are some curtains to be seen here and there, but like the general impression when I look at these images is that the interiors look kind of empty. Now, there are two ways to solve this problem. The first way is you're a Corona user, so you have access to the Cosmos library and make use of it, take some assets out of it, some wall painting, some pendant hanging lamps, a wardrobe, a shelf, something that is visible on the inside, and place it beside the windows so that we see that there is stuff on the inside, and which makes the interiors feel lived in. Or you can work with parallax solutions. Now, the parallax solutions are great. They're very easy to use. It's more or less a plane that you place behind your windows, and then you can exchange the interior style. You can exchange if it is lit up or not, which is very convenient. But be aware that the parallax solutions often have issues with Corona. Last time I used one, it was in June this year, and it led to lots of crashes on my file. So be cautious when you use parallax solutions. I hope that they figure it out. The Corona team figures it out, because parallax solutions are really, really easy to use and save a lot of time. Material-wise, I think that the materials are functional. They, how should I put it? They kind of match their designated surfaces. But on the other hand, I also have the feeling that the materials are very sameish looking. Like it was some general basic material, and you copied it a few times and connected a different image to the diffuse slot, and then just applied it to the different facades. So I'm missing a bit the distinction in the material properties, so that concrete behaves more like concrete and metal more like metal, to put it more clearly. In order to make this work, I always recommend doing the following. So override all the other materials. Don't work with direct sun, with strong shadows, because it will overexpose your materials. Instead, take an overcast HDRI or just a white surrounding, global illumination, and then work on your materials one by one until you achieve a behavior of theirs that is very authentic and true to the real life material. Lighting wise, I would say the lighting works. It's functional. It lights up the scene, especially on the day version of it. When it comes to the evening version, it's not so good anymore, because again, let's think about this rule that the brightest areas are the most important ones. So in this case, it looks like the street, the fences, this corner of the street and this walkway here are more important than your actual buildings or the whole gated community that you represent, which obviously isn't optimal, right? So what you can do to counter that is to really pump up the lighting within the building, so that they are really lit up from within. You can also light up the facades. It's something that is really normal nowadays. You just need a few spots on the sides and you can light up the whole facade. You can also light up the whole courtyard too, in order for this area of the image to be the important one and not the street, because the street is really secondary. If so, let's say artificial lighting on the courtyard or the facades isn't an option because the clients don't want it, for example, what you can do is try to illuminate the facades, let's say with a setting sun, because this way you will do it in a natural way and the clients cannot really have something against that, right? So yeah, I would say the lighting can be optimized a lot. Framing wise, I think that positioning the camera unusually high, because this is more like a drone shot rather than a usual eyesight shot, makes sense in this case because of all the fencing around the buildings. Also, the framing manages to fit in the whole complex, which is good. But at the same time, it is kind of more of a purely informative framing rather than something which also has some emotion to it. So in this case, I will gladly show you a comparison with a project of mine. It's not look at how awesome I am and how not awesome you are or something like this. It's just a comparison so that we can together take a look at a different example and maybe make our own thoughts, what works, what doesn't, and so on. So I'll show you this building. It's an apartment house building in a small German city. The houses that you see in the background actually also belong to this project, to a different phase of it, but it doesn't matter. They are done by the same developer that also developed this building here. And this is the first shot, and as you see, it's more of an informative one. Why? Because we are showing a lot of surroundings. We are showing the garages here that obviously aren't beautiful to look at. You see, I have also parked cars next to the Tesla. There is this Caddy or whatever this is, which isn't even a beautiful car. You see a lot of street, but it shows the situation of this building and its surroundings. So it's very informative. In order to add some atmosphere to it, and no, Mario, I'm not flexing, I'm just trying to prove a point. When you see, I tried to add a bit of atmosphere and mood to it by having those long shadows that make this otherwise empty area a bit diverse. Also, they darken it so that my building can stick out visually. I also have one of the building's facade being really nicely lit up, while the other is in the shadows. But beware, it's not really dark. It's just in the shadows so that I achieve some three-dimensionality and some volume to this building. But it's not dark here. And still, I chose this facade to be the dark one and not this one, because here I have my main entrance and my staircase that I can actually light up also during the day, because it actually makes sense. So that I have some darkness here and I can put some light into it. Just explaining to you the logic of this image. But again, it is more informational than it is emotional. So let's get a bit, closer to this building. And then we have this second shot where you see we are closer. We concentrate more on the building now. You see we have less surroundings, less stuff that is distracting us, and more stuff that we can actually concentrate on, which is the building and this new street that comes with the building. And I have a lower focal length because I'm closer to the building, which makes the perspective more dynamic. And if we want to take it even a step further with an even lower focal length and being even closer to the building, an even more dynamic shot, then it looks something like this. And yes, Mario, this project is on the Heldor website, I think. Yeah, it is. So yeah, as you see, this image is over the top. We have a very low placed camera. We have this over the top sun, which is kind of blending us. We have almost flat iron building dynamic perspective. But again, you saw the steps from a more informative image like this to a more emotional image like this one. Also, if you have to work with a rather informative scene, and so you cannot do this dynamic or overly moody and dynamic shots, then you can again use the light like this, for example. So what I did here is I had an overcast. I chose to have an overcast sky. So gray clouds, not too gray so that it doesn't become depressing, but still gray enough so that the building can stick out on their background. And then we have the building bathing in some sunset light so that it really sticks out nicely. And I hope that all of those images that I just showed you can provide you with some ideas on how you can use different angles, different camera positioning, and light for your compositions in order for your images to become better. So let's continue with the next point, which is the scattering. I think that the scattering generally looks good, both on the grass and the shrubs. Maybe it ends up a bit abruptly on this here, but it's a nitpick. It doesn't matter that much. Maybe scatter some leaves on the walkways, on the streets for a more natural and an authentic feel to the whole scene. And also I see that you experimented with some environmental volumetric effects, because we have something like fog here, so distance fog, and here there is something which resembles God rays, if I'm not mistaken. This is nice. I think it's lovely that you experimented with this. Also, making your background more bleached out makes the buildings stick out more, which is a very good thing regarding the composition. The thing is, your fog seems to be taking place only on the left side of the image, because the right side is very saturated. This tree here sticks out like a sore thumb. It's really saturated, it's really contrasty, and those trees also, which is kind of strange. So if you have fog, use it on both sides of your scene. So Irina, in conclusion, I would say there was a lot to improve, or a lot that can be done a bit better. But then again, the most important thing about your work is already there. And this is the fact that you care for the quality of your work and that you are willing to improve. Because this is the thing that will take your work to the next level and make you a great artist. Let me check the comments, because a lot has been said since I started talking about Irina's work. Alan is here. Theo, with another great show. You go, buddy, and you get well, buddy. Right? Mario, I already read some of your comments. Yes, Evelyn asks, in these shoots, the illumination is with HDRI. If you talk about those, no, in this case, it's sun plus sky and clouds. And in this case, the background is an HDRI and the general illumination plus only sun without sky. Mario says, thanks, I've been looking every project from your studio to learn. They're so good. Thanks a lot, Mario. It means a lot to me. And yeah, this project also is on my site. Yeah. Angel says, hi Theo, nice insights. How often do you happen to use depth of field in projects? As much as I can, honestly. I love depth of field. Let me check my page. I have depth of field on almost every project that I make, because I really like this effect. It helps with the composition. As you see here, for example, I have depth of field on the foreground so that we can focus more on this background. And this is an interior project, but on exterior projects, I also use depth of field like this one. You see the foreground is blurry so that the image is more set in focus. So yeah, I love depth of field and I use it as much as possible. It makes for longer render times, which I sometimes regret, but generally I love depth of field. Janita says, hey Theo, for exterior shots, generally are you only using HDRI and V-Ray Corona Sun, or is it okay to use artificial lighting as well? Well, when it comes to exterior shots, I tend to use either HDRI or sun and sky. Sometimes I also combine them, like in this case, I here again used HDRI for the global illumination and the background sky, and then I just added some sun, so Corona Sun in my case, where in order to get these highlights here. But like really artificial light sources, I don't like this much. What I have learned from Nikos is that if I have some light sources visible in a scene, like you see here, I turn them on. I always turn them on because it just looks more beautiful this way. Because you see the shadows here, you see the shadows on the wall, it just looks nicer. And Evelyn says, thanks, you're very welcome, dear Evelyn. Let's move on to something interesting. This is a tutorial, the first out of 4 for today, from by Jesse from RedefineFX. He says, hi everyone, I made a new water portal tutorial with Phoenix, V-Ray, and even some Cosmos for the palm trees. It covers how to effect the liquid simulation with multiple forces, add foam, wet maps, water material, caustics, and more. It's a half an hour, 28-minute long tutorial, in-depth, step-by-step, really nicely explained. So if you want to learn something about Phoenix, about water and ways to affect this water with different forces and make procedurally generated foam and so on, caustics, definitely check this tutorial out. And folks, by the way, are you into VFX? Are you into Phoenix? Maybe? How do you do your water usually? Gladly answer this, and while you do so, we have something very interesting, a discussion topic posted by Amir, who says, hello everyone. First, I want to thank Theodor Vladov for his life and every tips he tried to help us through it. My pleasure, Amir. Second, I have many important questions, please, and this is true, the questions are really interesting and important. So let's go through them together. First of all, he says, how many modification is allowed to the client after you finish the design? If we can put a common process to be an international reference, it would be amazing, because the clients made me crazy. I can understand you. I also find the idea for an international standard on the number of correction rounds to be a really great one, to be honest. Generally speaking, to answer your questions, from my experience and from the people I know around me, it's 2 or at most 3 rounds of corrections that are included in the price. What is important, however, are 2 things. First of all, in your quote, be very clear about the number of included rounds of corrections. So write down per image there are 2 rounds of corrections in an understandable way so that the clients can get it. Also, for the case that an additional round of corrections is needed, add an additional position in your quote where you state how much this will cost the client. So will it be a fixed price, will it be an hourly wage based price, or maybe a potential price from the whole image price or something like this, but just state it somewhere so that it is written black and white, so that if a situation like this happens, that you have made your rounds of corrections. Also make sure to let the clients know when you make those rounds of corrections. So let's say they want to change something, then you send them the new versions, the updated versions, and you write down this was the first round of corrections. Then they want to change something else, you send them the second update, and then you say this was the second and final round of corrections. So if they come to you at the third time, you can point out your quote and say, you know what, 2 rounds were included, the third one costs so and so. And then it's up to them to decide if it is worth it to them or not. So, folks, gladly share in the comments the number of correction rounds that you offer to your clients so that we can get a bit more input on this topic. And in the meantime, let's continue with the second question, which is, if you are working as a 3D artist in a company, is it logical that your manager is sitting beside you and modify every single detail in the design, materials, colors, and lights? And guess what? The deadline is still the same. I don't think that this is normal. To me, this sounds like micromanaging, which is something bad for 2 reasons. First of all, if your manager spends the whole time behind you telling you what to do, it's a waste of time. They can actually do it themselves instead of telling you to do it. So this doesn't make sense in terms of time management. And second, I mean, if it is the very first project you do as an employee for a, let's say, visualization studio, then I think that something like this can happen. And even though it could be a bit annoying to you, it can be meant well, just to help you get into the project and so on. But if you have been working somewhere for a while and somebody is constantly behind you and telling you what to do, then it's an obvious trust issue. And this is not a good thing for both sides, both for your manager and for yourself. So either check if you can do something about the situation, or maybe look for a new studio, unfortunately. Folks, you in the comments or you watching, how do you see this? Do you have something like this happen if you are employed somewhere? Happen to you? And the third topic is, what is the suitable and logical time to get the final render shots in high quality with post-production after you get the file with completed design? It's a very broad question, and the answer is also very broad. It really depends on the project. So if it is a common living room, a small common living room, the delivery time could be something like 2 days. If it is a whole new huge living quarter, it could be 2 months. So you cannot just say something like that without not knowing the project. Generally speaking, I would say that the deadline should be set like this, that it is possible for you to deliver good final results in high quality without crunching, without doing overtime, staying at the weekend, staying in the evenings or at night, and so on. Of course, there are exceptions. There are some projects that just have to be done this way. Maybe they're paid very well, paid extra. Maybe it's a very branded and great client that you will get a lot of exposure from. Sometimes, or a competition, sometimes things like this happen, but it shouldn't be the default state, in my opinion. And yeah, what do you folks think about all of this? Because while I'm waiting for your answers, I will move on to the next tutorial, which is a post by Arthur from the Common Point. He says, "Hello, fellow artists. New free lesson from the Common Point Masterclass is available on YouTube, and we'd love to share it with you. This time we go over choosing a perfect backplate and replacing the sky in sunset scenarios. Problem-free. Join us and watch the video here. The link is in the comments. It's about 3ds Max and Corona, Bartosz and Arthur. First of all, thanks guys. Thanks for all those free lessons that you share with us from your course once a month. They're very valuable. There is a lot of knowledge, even for very seasoned artists. There is a lot of stuff to learn from these tutorials. I make sure to watch them every time they come out, and I really love them. Now, guys, it's not an ad. I just really gladly support what these two guys are doing. It's really great. So, of course, we can enjoy their free lessons, but if you will, you can always, of course, book the full course, which comes with, a whole package with some exclusive content and bonus stuff that we obviously won't be getting for free. Also, I think that this scene, which is the main scene that they actually explain everything on, is also included in the package. And last but not least, you will be supporting them, because I can tell you from experience that creating such quality content takes a lot of time, a ton of time and passion and dedication. So supporting them is also a great thing, because we also learn a lot from them. So yeah, gladly share with me if you have subscribed for the Common Point course, do you like it, and so on. In the meantime, I'll check the comments. I see Mario has written something. He says, I would say that is an issue. I personally don't like being supervised 24/7. Like he says, it's uncomfortable. It absolutely is. I mean, there is something wrong with a workflow like this, for sure. Fatir says, Arthur and Bartosz tutorial is top-notch, been following the common point since 24 Hours of Chaos 2 years ago. Rightfully so, I do too, Fatir. Let's move on to the third tutorial for today and the second one when it comes to Phoenix. This time, however, we're on the opposite side of water, so this time we are talking about fire. It's Georgi from Chaos himself who says, hey peeps, for all the fire lovers, I made a brand new tutorial going over how to light an object gradually on fire and how to render it using V-Ray. The keyword here is gradually, because if we take a look at this presentation, you'll see how gradually it starts burning, which I think is really awesome and very authentic. You can find the tutorial along with the scene files here. Awesome that it's also the scene files are included. By the way, they were also included on Jesse's tutorial for Max and Phoenix, this water portal. The project file was also completely free to download there so that you can play around with it. And in the case of Georgi here, you can also have the whole test file for free. You can download it and play around with it. The lesson itself is around 40 minutes. It's a step-by-step tutorial, really understandably explained. Both Jesse and Georgi make the usage of Phoenix really easy. So if you're interested in this, gladly follow it. I totally recommend it. And by the way, I wanted to ask you, how do you do the fire in your scenes? My guess is that you mostly use a 2D texture with an opacity map applied to it and some self-illumination. This can work out actually for some scenes, but not for all, and especially not for animations. But yeah, of course, there are also other means of doing this. There are VDBs, and of course, there is Phoenix. So yeah, what is your solution when it comes to actually using fire in your scenes? And while you're typing this, I will continue with Seper's project. Sepera says, the design of the interior space by combining dark brown colors with light gray to create a warm and relaxing feeling. Also, an effort has been made to use a modern and fixed form in the design of furniture, and in every space according to this form, it contrasts with a different subject, creates a three-dimensional space in the audience. This is a very confusing but very profound sounding description, Seper, I gotta admit, but I guess I understood what you mean. It's done in Rhinoceros, V-Ray and Photoshop. As you know, as a former Rhino user, I am always very, very happy to see works done in Rhino. He says, please give me a feedback, great attitude on your side, Seper, and his Instagram. So yeah, it's a nice description, even though it's a bit cryptic. I only cannot tell if this is a commercial work or a personal exercise of yours. The image presentation itself is pretty consistent, in my opinion. Maybe don't put images that are very similar from the viewing angle next to each other, because it looks like a bit like copy pasting. And generally, I would say that the images look a bit underlit. But yeah, it's the time of the day that you depict it. So let's dive into the design. Before that, let's maybe go through the images one by one. So we have this living room situation, the couch, and then the other side of it with the TV and the coffee table. We have a very nice close-up on this lamp here, which I really, really like. Then we have this mixed usage kitchen island dining table combo. Then we have this entrance area wardrobe with shoe rack thing. Again, the dining table, the kitchen itself. Then again, this really interesting combi of kitchen island and dining table. A very beautiful close-up, or it's not really a close-up, but a very beautiful angle, which I like a lot. And the clay model. Again, I'm always a fan. Please share your clay models. It's always nice to be able to see the lighting setup and a more reduced version of your scene. What is strange in this current case, Seper, is that you uploaded this scene, so this clay model, but you have no textured version of it uploaded, which is the first time I see it like this, to be honest. But yeah, generally speaking, I would say you achieved this relaxing atmo and mood that you were after. The earth tones, the materials generally go together well. The pieces of furniture fit the style. When it comes to this island, to this kitchen island with a dining table attached to it, to me, especially on this shot, it looks a bit more like an office scene, and I think that the reason for this are the chairs themselves, because they very much resemble classic office chairs. So if the chairs were different, I think that this scene would, this situation here would look differently, in my opinion. Now, if we take a look at the kitchen counter, I really like what you did here. This is something unique and innovative. I have never seen it before, I guess. And if this plate here is, let's say, metallic or magnetic, you can maybe even utilize it to put your knives onto it and so on, which is also nice. The diffuse lighting that comes from behind it is cool, but it doesn't manage to properly illuminate the counter the same way that the light that we usually put underneath the cupboard does. The entrance wardrobe is a bit weirdly positioned. It's not weird itself, but it's like directly next to the dining table, so it looks like you just come into this apartment while somebody's eating and you just directly face them. So I kind of miss a bit of a visual division between the areas. And the last thing maybe is that this carpet here to me is kind of very underdimensioned. It should be way bigger. When it comes to the modeling in general, I think that your modeling is nice. I saw some chamfered edges. We talked about it last time. I think you have used the round edges options in V-Ray, which is great. The used assets also look pretty nice. And I wanted to ask you about it because back when I was a Rhino user, my assets, the assets that were available to me for me to download were very limited. It was more or less flying architecture, sometimes turbo squid, but it was really limited. So I would gladly know, how does this look by now? Did it change? Is there maybe some importer or a converter for Max or SketchUp models maybe that you can use in order to use those models into your scenes, or is it still the FBX and OBJ models that you have to import and then retexture from scratch, which obviously was very tedious thing to do? And while we're talking about materials, I think that your materials again also look pretty nice. The floor material can use some tweaking because currently it looks a bit muddy and it just transitions into the wall, which also looks a bit muddy. So maybe you can give them some more reflection. Maybe they could be a bit smoother, like as if they were polished and so on. The marble could use of course some subsurface scattering. It always makes marble look more realistic and not like marble veneer or marble foil. Also in the kitchen, first of all, here you forgot to use it in the kitchen, but then when you used it there, it is kind of overscaled and therefore low poly, so maybe upscale your texture. And maybe the wood is a bit rough and maybe not reflective enough, but this is a matter of taste. It's not so important. When it comes to the lighting, as I said in the beginning, when it comes to the artificial lighting, it actually works good. It behaves naturally. Let's take a look at this example. This table lamp illuminates exactly the area that you expect it to. It looks authentic. This is awesome. But generally, the whole scene looks a bit underexposed, underlit to me. So I try to experiment a bit with it. So you see in this GIF how it looks like. So the darker version is yours and the brighter one is my version. I know you depict something like an early evening on an overcast day, but again, it's not only about realistic depiction, it's also about beautiful images, about images that look nice, that are properly lit and so on. So please consider this. And when it comes to the framing, we are at this very first image. So let's go image by image and talk about the framing. On the first shot, I think that the framing is okay when it comes to the angle, but there are, composition-wise, there are some very empty areas here in the foreground and back there on the wall. With a larger carpet, maybe a carpet with structure or maybe with long hair, you can fix the problem here. And with some wall art, you can fix the empty wall, and then the angle is actually pretty nice. The second one is better when it comes to the composition, but it's a bit cramped. It looks cramped. So if you have an angle that ends up looking cramped and too full with stuff, give it a bit more space to the sides. So this is what I tried to make out of this angle, and you see with more space to the top, to the side, to the left, it looks a bit more spacious generally. But yeah, maybe design-wise, this table is a bit too massive for a narrow situation like this. So maybe get a coffee table which is a bit more transparent in general. Let's move on to the next one. This is this very nice close-up with beautiful depth of field in the foreground and this lamp in focus. Nothing to say here. It is really nice, really enjoyed. This one, framing-wise and cropping-wise, is good. Maybe use portrait mode in this situation so that the lamp that is hanging above this table is also depicted. Then this one, I like the simplicity and the minimalism of it, but I think that it needs some more space, some more air to the bottom. So I tried it out, then it looks more like this. I like it more this way. Maybe this is a matter of personal taste. I personally prefer this a framing or cropping like this. Now let's take a look at the next one. I like this shot. What I don't like is this very, very slight angle that you have, this very slight camera rotation, because it is unnecessary. There is no good reason for it, to be honest. So in a case like this, just go for a central perspective, because otherwise it looks like it is a mistake on your side. Then let's go to the kitchen. When it comes to the kitchen, the camera is again rotated a bit, but in this case it makes sense, because when you rotate, given where you're positioned, you show more of the kitchen, and you also show this corner with the cactus plants, which makes sense composition wise. This one is a pretty good example of framing, if you ask me, because everything that is important to this scene is visible. There are some really good contrasts. So we have, let's say, the lit up plant in front of a dark background. We have the chairs and the counter again in front of a dark background, but we have the base here in front of a bright background. Here, the floor and you know, this shelf here. And then we have this one. I already mentioned it. It is a really beautiful, interesting, creative angle, which I like a lot. It is also very atmospheric. And again, the clay model that we talked about. So in conclusion, I would say this is it is great that you're constantly experimenting with new stuff, with new scenes. And I think that with every next project, you make a small step towards becoming a better artist. But in general, if you want the steps to be a bit larger, then work more with references and try to maybe recreate existing projects in order to learn from them and then apply this knowledge to your next project. So yeah, we have here the announcement for today's show. For this scheduled show, it actually worked. I still cannot believe it. Let me check the comments. We have Sebastian who says, hello, I use a file from Chaos Library. It's okay, but only for still renders. Yeah, use that too. I know what you mean, but yeah, why not? I mean, if I was better in Phoenix, I would probably always use Phoenix. I sometimes also use VDBs, but often when it is about, let's say, candlelight or something, I think that just a 2D plane is also sufficient. Now, as a next, we have something or somebody very interesting. This is Tilina, who is a Sri Lankan artist and designer with his projects. And his projects are a bit different than what we are usually used to in this group. Because, first of all, as far as I know, he first creates mock-ups of his projects and then visualizes them. Also, his creations are more, generalistic and conceptual. They revolve around, they're inspired by nature, by the local flora and fauna, and have these organic flowing forms, and you can really easily recognize his works. So in his case, I wouldn't be talking about, the materials and the modeling and so on, but also be a bit more general. Yeah, I mean, he has uploaded 2 projects. So this yoga hall and this forest Balinese bamboo villa. Our show rules, we only talk about 1 project per artist per week. So I would rather concentrate more on this project, and let's take a look at it. I think it looks amazing. It's very interesting to look at. This is something that we are not used to see. We usually have this boxy architecture, and suddenly there we see these organic flowing forms, and I think this is pretty spectacular to me. It also, design-wise, it really manages to get to me personally, because when I see his works, I actually imagine putting some money aside in order to save up for me and my family to actually go there and book, let's say, this composition here for a few days and just enjoy this solitude of pure nature and this very special architecture. So yeah, generally you can say Tilina's works have a certain reaction to them when it comes to me personally. Gladly let me know if it is the same with you. So yeah, it's generally a joy to look at. I don't know how implementable those are. I don't know how they are in terms of functionality, stuff like fire safety regulations or sanitary installations and so on. But I'm not sure if this is the right topic in a case like this, when it's more about concepts. Regarding the modeling of his works, I think it's very interesting, because with all the software, the 3D software available out there, stuff like Blender and 3ds Max and Maya and Rhino, these works are actually made in SketchUp. And let's be honest, at least in my case, SketchUp is the last software that I think about when I see organic forms like this. But yeah, it seems SketchUp has evolved a lot since the last time I used it, which was while I was still studying. So yeah, the only thing that I have to say when it comes to your modeling, Tilina, is that you sometimes tend to use 3D people in the foreground, which, I don't think is a good idea, because they don't look good so close, and they make for, let's say, they take away authenticity and realism from your scenes. The materials, you always manage to ace them, or to ace their general look. They look authentic, they look local, and they behave the way they should, in my opinion. Regarding the lighting of your scenes, it's mostly something like this, which I think very nicely fits the conceptual nature of your projects. But maybe just in order to diversify your portfolio, maybe sometimes try to change the lighting, the general lighting that you have in your scene. Maybe use a real sun and sky, especially if you have, let's say, a shade giving roof. You can gladly use a direct sun, so that you actually hint the function of this roof of providing shelter and shade, or maybe have a rainy scene, for example. And when it comes to the framing, I think that you can also add some variety to your scenes if you consider having bird views, for example, because especially with the forms of your buildings, I can imagine them being very interesting when you see them from above. Also, maybe position yourself in one of those buildings. If we take a look at this composition here, I know that conceptual projects like this aren't about the small details. But if you position the camera somewhere in this small building, for example, and use depth of field so that you blur your foreground and the close details, you can still show how it feels to be somewhere here and take a look in this direction, for example. And when it comes to the framing or composition, one last idea, because often your works are inspired by some plants and blossoms and so on. Maybe have this plant or blossom somewhere near grow somewhere near your house, and then make a close-up on it so that people can actually understand where the concept for your idea came from, and you can then just concentrate the camera on this plant or the blossom and have the buildings in the background just be blurry and doffed out. And I think this would be quite cool. But yeah, again, as I already said, your projects surely are something different. It looks like you found your style, because again, I always recognize your works the moment I see them. So I'm curious to know if it actually pays off for you. Did you manage, or do you manage to attract the clients that you are after when you do these projects? Are maybe some of these projects actually commissioned works and not just concepts the way I thought they are? This would be interesting. And to you folks in the comments, I also have a question, which is, how do you prefer it? Do you prefer to be generalists, so you do interiors, exteriors, automotive renderings, product shots, everything that is thrown at you? Or do you actually prefer to concentrate on a certain topic, let's say interiors, and perfect it in order to get a certain type of clients? How is it? Mario, let me check the comments. Helen says, yeah, very atmospheric and inviting places. Indeed, maybe someday we can go there. And Mario says the 3D person model can be improved with stable diffusion for sure. Yes, I also follow some people who experiment a lot with stable diffusion, and I will probably someday even book one of their courses in order to learn how to do that. But for now, if you don't know how to do it, use 2D cutouts for closer people, or just leave them away. And this is my recommendation. Then we have, I think, our fourth tutorial and last for today. It is from Abdi, from As Art 3D and motion graphics. He is very much into VFX, I would say, motion graphics, TyFlow, and also he's pretty much of an expert in RealClone. And what he did here is a live session with no voice or sound whatsoever. It's just showing you for an hour and 15 minutes how a scene, which in the end ends up looking like, let me get to this. Where can we see it? Something like this, how a scene like this is done from scratch. And what's more interesting is that it's about flexible molding based on splines. So if the way he built this scene, if he changes the spline that forms this pool, for example, everything around, so the surrounding tiles, the edge of the pool, the water surface will change accordingly, which is of course a very flexible way of modeling. So if you're interested in this, gladly take a look at this tutorial. Again, it has no sound, but it gives you the option to use your own soundtrack and just enjoy it while watching, listening to some of your favorite music. Let's move up here. The next thing that we have is something very interesting, because it's more or less a study on focal length. So we talked about focal length previously while I showed you my project. So let's dive in and take a look what we have here. So Evelyn says, hello folks, I'm here to share my work with you based on Pinterest references. I hope you like it, or at least this is what the translator tells me she says, because she wrote it in Spanish, I'll say. Evelyn, please use English, because it is the official language of the group, first of all, and second, I don't speak Spanish, so I just have to rely on the translator for this. But there is also some further information down here. So project name is apparently Sparkly Terrazzo. It's focal distance shots with 24, 28, 35, 50 and 70 millimeters. So let's take a look at them. This is the 24 millimeter shot. I won't be talking about modeling and lighting and so on. The scene looks good the way it is. The only thing that you seem to have missed, Evelyn, is to put the texture on this mirror here, but this is not a big deal. We'll only concentrate on the focal lengths here. So we will start with this focal length of 24 millimeters. You see, we see a lot of the bathroom. So 24 millimeters, the 28 millimeters too, they are very typical. So this is the 28 millimeters. They are both very typical for interiors, have a certain strong distortion to them. Then we go over to 35 millimeters and then to 50 millimeters, which are almost more typical for exteriors. They're more natural with less distortion. And then we have the 70 millimeters, which is almost like a telephoto lens, which is good for distance shots or close-ups. And generally, if we go through all these images, this is why this is a very nice study. You see that the lower the focal length, the more of the scene is visible, but at the cost of higher distortion, which at some point with values below 16 millimeters is just unbearable. And the higher the value of the focal length, the less of the scene is visible, but the image looks more natural to the eye, the way we're used to see those objects. So yeah, great study. And I'm looking forward to the next study or the next project of yours, dear Evelyn. Chi says something, I would like to concentrate more on one area. For me, it's interior. Well, fair game, why not? I don't think that there is something, true or false, wrong or right here. It's just your personal preference. Now let's continue with one very interesting non-ArchViz project by Abderrahman. He says, hello everyone, something a bit different than the usual, with a bit of different workflow than what I usually do. Typically I use Corona renderer for the final render. However, this time I decided to use Blender 3.6 for everything alongside, so no Corona this time. Pretty surprised with how Psycho has gotten since the last time I used it 2 years ago. Although I still prefer V-Ray and Corona renderer. Gaia was used for the terrain. For those of you who have never seen Gaia, Gaia is this terrain design application. There is a free download option if you want to test it out. It looks quite rad, to be honest. I really like it, but I have never tried it myself. Someday I will. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from Nicolas Burier about Gaia. So let's take a look at Abderrahman's images. We have this sunset image with the bioluminescent algae in the front. We have the awesome day image and another version of the evening sunset shot. So your presentation is great, the description is great, not only because you said what software you used, but because you also explained a bit more how all of this came to life, and that you also got back to softwares you were used to use in your workflow, which is very interesting, I think. And when it comes to the images, they obviously look very nice. Personally, I think that those two are very similar in terms of general presentation. So it looks like you have this image twice, which obviously isn't that great. Design-wise, let's discuss all of the topics based on this image. I think that design-wise, it looks very natural. It's a joy to look at this scene. It makes me want to be here, just sit on this border and just enjoy this picturesque view. The modeling is great. The materials are great, look very authentic. The assets you have used look fit the scene nicely. The environmental effects are quite good. So there is distance fog, which covers the distance mountains, and there is also some fog crawling onto the mountain in the foreground here, which is also very beautiful to look at. The lighting on the day shot is very realistic. It is just a generally awesome shot that you can just print out and put on your wall. The sunset is also very pretty to look at. It's of course very atmospheric, very moody. Personally, I don't like this much that composition-wise this area is so dark. So if you could just maybe rotate your illumination source a bit to the right so that you have more illumination here, so that these middle areas are more lit up than the sides and the foreground, it would be better. So something like this, for example, you see how you have a dark foreground here, and then the mountains are properly lit up and their reflection too. So you have a lot of light here in this area. So something like this. As for the shot with this bioluminescent algae, first of all, I'm not sure if this is bioluminescency at all, but I just assume it because this is the only explanation I have for this bluish glow. I'm not sure if this isn't exclusive to salty waters only, so seas and oceans. I don't know if you have this also on lakes, but maybe. I'm not a biologist, I don't know things like this. But I'm not sure if it fits the scene so greatly. And also there are some artifacts or some glow also in the foreground, which is a bit unexplainable to me because this algae is usually just only in the water. But it's more or less nitpicking. If we take a look at the water material, I want to show it to you a bit up close. It is absolutely awesome. It is very realistic with all of these small imperfections on the water surface. It's amazing. The framing is also great. It is very typical for a shot like this, so it makes it even more believable. So all in all, I would say it is awesome that you tried something new. Which is not ArcVis related. You learned a new software, at least to a certain extent, Gaia. Also, you revisited old software that you worked with in the past, so Blender and Cycles, to see its current state. So for me, this project is a total win. And how about you folks? When was the last time you learned or you tried out a new piece of software, and which was it, and how was your experience? Did you like it or not? So yeah, before we continue, let me take a look at the comments. We're already an hour and a half in and we still have a lot to talk about. But yeah, as you see, we want to talk about each and every topic and give it its attention that it deserves, and not just, stroll through all the projects and then just, move on, because this is not something you will be profiting from. So I hope you're not bored. I hope you're still there. I see you're there. And I'm very happy that you also are very active in the comments. Chi said, I would like to... we already read this. Irina says, Theo, thank you very much for the analysis of my renders. I couldn't watch it live time, but I just have seen. I'll try to improve my works using your advices. Thanks a lot. Very happy that this helps you, and I'm looking forward to your next project, Irina. Alessio says, I will finish to see the show later. Thanks, Theodor Vladov. Yeah, I know you must go. Have a good day. Celebrate today. And we'll talk about your work next week. Alessio. Subhan says, hi, Theodor Vladov. Thank you for everything you did for us. Can you add one more topic about PC or share some info to help build a PC for 3D work? Yeah, sure. We can generally talk about it. Maybe next time we can also open a new thread in the group, and just everybody can share their PCs and their specs, and then we can talk there too, Subhan. And in short, I will also talk about your work. But now let's continue with Konstantinos. You remember Konstantinos? Last time he had shared some images from the course they are preparing, a masterclass in 3D modeling. So he says, hello everyone again. Since the last post about our 3D modeling masterclass gathered a lot of positive attention, I thought I should share with you a short animation we did to present some of our 3D models that we will be teaching inside the masterclass. I also want to address some of the questions Theodor Vladov had about the masterclass, which he kindly asked in his recent live stream. So yes, the masterclass teaches the step-by-step process of creating high-quality detailed 3D models. This is awesome. Yes, we also teach UV unwrapping for all our models entirely inside 3ds Max, so no third-party plugins needed. This is even better. I just have a question about it, Konstantinos, which is, do you explain the general logic of how unwrapping works? Or is it more like which buttons need to be pressed to achieve the specific results needed for your masterclass or for the results of your masterclass? He also says, yes, a chapter of the masterclass is dedicated to teach students how to light and present their creations and how to put everything together to form a captivating portfolio. This is a very important and crucial point, because if you build a great model, you texture it properly, but you don't know how to present it properly, then you fail. So this is a very important topic, and it was important that we clarified this. So to me, the course sounds really good, so maybe check it out. So Konstantinos continues, thank you for all the interest everyone showed on our project. We will be happy to meet you inside. And there is this small video which I will gladly let play. I hope there are no licensing issues with it. I love the music of this video, and also the simple way everything is presented, because it is really, by the way, do you hear the music? I don't know, I cannot tell. I've never had music in the show so far, so please let me know if you hear it at all. So yeah, the address, it's cool music, right? You hear it, this is great. The address is meshmastery.com, where you can check out the course. And about the music, I really want to make a compliment to Konstantinos about the music of this show. So this is of this video. I love it. It's an instrumental rendition of I Know What You Want by Busta Rhymes and Mariah Carey. It came out in 2003 while I was still at high school. And it's generally a very nice melody. It is something that you then probably stick to your head, and you have to whistle to yourself the whole day. It has character to it. And let me have a very small rant about music, because I see, I'm very active in different groups, and I see projects from all parts of the world, and there is something about them that really annoys me when it comes to music and animations mostly, is how you see a project, it's a Scandinavian minimalist living whatever, and you have as a background you have this piano music playing, and then you see something Middle Eastern, and then you have more or less the same piano music playing. And sure, I know there are licensing problems. You cannot just take every song that you like and put it as a background of your animation because of licensing issues. I know that, but there is also a lot of license-free music out there, and also it has different genres, which is more than just simple piano music. Don't get me wrong, I like piano, but in the meantime, it's so overused that it is just generic. Let's get back to this, let's say, Middle Eastern project. There is great Middle Eastern instrumental music that you can actually play in the background of your project, and you don't need this generic piano. So I want to just encourage you to try out different styles if you want your animations to stick out, not only with their quality, but also with the sound that you have as a part of them, because the sound also matters a lot. It gives a lot of vibes, of local vibes maybe. It creates a certain atmosphere that goes with the project. So be more courageous when it comes to picking the music. You don't have to pick the piano tunes each and every time. Pick something else. Try rock or jazz or something else, reggae, I don't know. Just try to stick out a bit more. So yeah, let's continue. The next thing we have in this group is a post by Ahmed. Now, dear Ahmed, I would probably not talk about your posts, and the reason is, we have the first rule of our group is no promotions. Now, I talked about the course by The Common Point. I talked about the modeling masterclass by Konstantinos. So I have to discuss it with the other admins, but generally, personally, I don't have an issue with talking about stuff like this. The difference, however, is that the others try to engage more about, how the group can profit from this course or from this knowledge. They also talk about free stuff and so on. And please don't forget, this group is an educational community and not a marketplace. So please don't just drop by, share a link of how this AI organizer tool for sets works, and then just move on. If you want it to be a part of the group, maybe try a different approach. Maybe share the link, but write something along the lines of, hey there folks, I have developed this AI asset organizer tool, which you can use to prepare your downloaded assets to model libraries like Connector and so on. So there is a free version. Here is a video of how it works. Gladly download the free version, test it out, give me a feedback so that I can improve. This is more of a post that fits an educational community rather than just, dropping by, giving the link and just moving on, because this looks more like an ad and we don't want ads here. So gladly rework this post, right? So let's move on to Chiachi. I know she's in the comments. Let's see, but let's just check the comments here. So people seem to like the music. Chiachi says, I switched from 3ds Max to SketchUp this year. For my interior design purpose, I do feel SketchUp is easier to place objects around the scene with the inference function. Okay, good to know. Thanks for sharing, Chiachi. Helen says, a really catchy tune. It is indeed. Mario says, true, I wouldn't like the group to be full of just links dropped to gain views. Exactly, this is what it is about. We don't want that. I mean, again, if you engage us in something, if you make us a part of something, if we get to maybe test your project or shape it in a way, then it is something different, but it's not a marketplace. You're absolutely right, Mario. So let's continue with Chi. She says, hi dear group members, I would like to share with you my new personal CGI project. It is a house in Scotland. It's autumn time finally. Chi, as far as I know, you are situated in Germany, as I am. So if you ask me, it's not finally, because our summer already was like an autumn. It rained the whole time. So let us have a bit more summer, okay? And then we can have an autumn for the next 6 months or so. So she says, I used to live for 2 years in Fife, Scotland, some years ago. I have met very nice neighbors and love the ever-changing Scottish sky and the unforgettable taste of Talisker whiskey from the Isle of Skye. As an interior designer, I usually concentrate on interior. When I decided to model a house in Scotland, I thought it is a good idea to depict and recreate the versatile change of light and shadow under the beautiful Scottish sky from morning, late afternoon and through the late evening. I used V-Ray Sun with custom clouds to trace the sunlight along the space. The background houses were Google Street View pictures transformed into a billboard. Very smart solution. Comments on improvements are appreciated. Tools are SketchUp 2023, V-Ray and Photoshop. The assets are from Chaos Cosmos. You see her computer specs and the resolution. I think that the images you have rendered out are a bit small. My advice to you and to all of you is to render at least 2K resolution in order to be able to use the images everywhere. Chi, I think it is a very nice, very personal presentation. Not only explains the type of project and gives a lot of technical info, but also some personal insights, like what type of whiskey you like. I think this is a crucial information. I liked it a lot. Also, there is a nice variety to the images that we see here. We don't see anything that really repeats in an annoying way. Generally, looking at the images, some of them look a bit underlit, like this one. Now, I know you wanted to follow up a whole day, let's say from dusk till dawn, but sometimes, again, it's not only about realism, but about images that look the best they could. Let's go to the images one by one first. So we have this very first image when we are in the living room looking to the dining room and the courtyard. Then we are in the dining room and we see a lot of the courtyard out there. Then we have a bit of close-up of the skylight. Then a kitchen shot looking into the kitchen, then being in the kitchen and looking out of it in the direction of the dining room. Then we have a bit of a kitchen detail and then a moody evening close-up. And I think that design-wise, everything works fine mostly. Maybe this lamp here is a bit underdimensioned in order to light up this whole large table. And also it is placed way too low, in my opinion. It is almost at eyesight, and this really isn't convenient. Regarding the modeling, I think that the modeling is let's stay at this image maybe. I think that the modeling is quite nice. There is a lot of it with good attention to details. You wrote somewhere that you have modeled the whole kitchen on your own and you are very happy about it, and I would say rightfully so, because the kitchen is probably the best part of the whole house. My favorite part of it, it is really, really nicely done with lots of details. Everything seems to make sense. I really like the kitchen, so gladly be proud of yourself. Some of the edges on your scene look quite sharp, like this one. So there are let's say two ways to go about it. First of all, there is a plugin for SketchUp on Sketchucation. It's called Fredo Corner. I think it's a paid one that you can download in order to chamfer your edges in the similar to the chamfer modifier in 3ds Max. Alternatively, and this is really the easier alternative, is to use the edges texture, which is this one, in V-Ray, used in the bump texture channel in order to achieve a round corners effect. So if you take a look at this area here, just look at the round corners, and this is something you can use in your scene. Now, material-wise, I'm not sure in which direction I should go. Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, in my opinion. Some materials look quite decent, like the wall materials, for example, the planks on the terrace. The kitchen materials also look quite good. Others need some tweaking because, let's say, the material on the fence or this hedge behind it, they look almost like a cartoon. They're overly saturated and they then don't look realistic at all. So you should definitely fix them. Also, the floor material, let's take a look where we see it nicely here. I see no structure to the floor material, to be honest. It's just like some continuous planks, so it doesn't look like parquet or something. So in a situation like this, again, there is a plugin. As far as I know, it is a floor generator for SketchUp. It is again, or it was available on Sketchucation. Now it is not anymore, but you can still find it as a Dropbox download somewhere. Alternatively, just use a texture, one of the Cosmos textures that are at your disposal, like this one, for example, and you see how clearly the structure is visible on it. What do we have more? Yeah, the lighting and framing. For the lighting and framing, this is where I gotta say I see the biggest issue. So I will talk about these points together. So we'll go through all the images one by one and carefully discuss them. So let's start with the first one, which unfortunately is one of the not so good examples because both the lighting and the framing aren't optimal on this one. The thing is, again, we already talked a few times about those rules, how the most lit up areas tend to be the most important ones, the areas where the viewer looks up straight away after opening the image or seeing the image for the first time. So in order to showcase this, I will show you a gallery. Let's take a look at this gallery, for example. You see how the walkways where people actually move around aren't lit up really. It's the museums or the galleries exponents and the paintings that have been lit up. We have, of course, stronger examples like this one or something like this one. So I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. You light up the thing that you want to properly show to somebody. So if we follow this logic and go back to your project, you will see how in this case the most lit up parts of this image are the facade of the neighbor and the fence, and both of these aren't important at all, especially for us standing in the living room. So in order to make the living room the important part of this image, you need to have more light here. So this light that we have in the corner, which again isn't important, it's just the corner of the image, should be somewhere here on the coffee table, on the couch. Now, if you want to make a shot which mostly showcases the dining room winter garden, let's go it like this, then you can place your camera somewhere around the backrest of this couch. Use a depth of field on it so that the foreground is blurry, and then you can concentrate more on this area. But being here, the way you have positioned the camera right now, we have to concentrate on our living room. And for this, the framing is bad because you shouldn't be cutting off the TV, you shouldn't be cutting off this table down here, and you should properly show this whole area. Let's continue with the second one, which is better because if we again follow the logic from our gallery here, you see how the table, which is in our foreground, we're in the dining area, so it makes sense for the dining table to be lit up and to be one of the main eye catchers of this scene, and this is partially the case, and this is why this image is better than the first one. Still, framing-wise, I think that a portrait framing would have been better here. It would have first showcased that you have a beautiful skylight that you actually have also beautifully modeled up here. Also, you wouldn't cut off the dining table, which is again the main actor in this scene. Maybe also you should rotate your lighting to come from the right, so that this whole table is probably lit up. Also, we don't see the shadowy sides of the lamp and this plant, but they are also properly lit up. So again, it could be improved. That we see some of the courtyard is of course a nice bonus, but this shot should be more about this dining room situation. Now this one, this is probably the worst of all, because it just looks like in the last moment, your camera just moved to the side without you knowing, and then it took the photo. Because I really don't know what to look at on this picture, because the only thing that's not being cut off are the two spots, the switch here and the lamp, and everything that I would consider interesting to me, like again this beautiful skylight, the dining table in an evening mood. Or even this painting is being cut off and I don't see it properly. So also it is generally a bit underlit as lighting wise. The fourth shot, however, is way better in this regard, because this time you have the light. It also, you see, if you have the light at with a proper positioning, some of your hard work actually becomes visible, like the texture on this wall, for example. Also, what we have here nicely highlighted is the kitchen area, which makes sense because we are looking in this direction, so it makes sense for it to be lit up. So in this regard, this framing and this shot is way better. Again, in a situation like this, I would have preferred portrait mode, I think, with some depth of field on the dining table, so that the focus goes more towards the kitchen. As a next, we have this shot where we are in the kitchen. I like the lighting here a lot. Again, we have a lot of direct light in the kitchen, so in the area where we want to look at, but we also have beautiful light play on this wall with nice contrast to it. So I like this shot a lot. What is unnecessary in my opinion is this slight camera rotation, because you don't need it. You can just go for a straight central perspective. What's also a bit odd is this sky. It's very saturated, underexposed in my opinion, and I have never been to Scotland, I don't know this, but it has some kind of a purple tint to it, which looks kind of strange to me. Then we have this one, which is actually a beautiful shot. It's a contre-jour one, but again, it works. The thing which is a bit strange to me is that, again, in my opinion, the sky should be more overexposed for an interior shot like this, and less saturated. Let me see which shot it is. The framing is also a bit off. Maybe you can just zoom in more onto this area here. Also, your verticals aren't straight. This may be a deliberate choice, but also maybe not. I'm not sure. It always looks a bit tidier as a framing if your verticals are straightened up. On this shot, I very much like the idea for the moody whiskey evening for Scotland. It just fits everything. But first of all, cropping wise, I would have a shot like this. I would recommend a shot like this. So more like landscape mode, and then concentrating on this area mostly. And then we have this compositional controversy here. On the left side, we actually don't. On the left side, everything is as it should be. So we have our focus because we have depth of field, as you see. On the left side, we have our focus placed on the lamp. And also the lamp is nicely illuminated. So everything here is harmoniously going together. When we take a look at the fireplace and the bottle, however, we have this visual or this compositional controversy because the fireplace is obviously lit up, it's a fire, but it's out of focus. And the whiskey here is in focus, but it's underlit. So all in all, I would say you have, with this project, with this house, you have a very solid base for great portfolio shots, but you still don't have those shots. So my personal recommendation is to rework some of these shots, especially when it comes to lighting and composition. Tune up some of the materials that we talked about. Gladly do some reading and try to follow the general photographic rules on composition, on lighting, and so on. And gladly work with references, because this is not the first cottage home that has been, photographed or depicted. So maybe try to find a similar project and try to see what the photographers, the professional photographers, did with it, how they captured it in images. In order to make the most out of your nicely prepared and modeled house. I hope this helps you. Oh, let's check the comments. My dad is also here. This is great. So let's take a look at Subhan's project, which is almost the last but one. So because we are already at almost 2 hours. Subhan says, hello friends, my new work, I hope you like it. Thanks. Software is 3ds Max Corona renderer, and it's about him being a freelance 3D artist from Pakistan. Subhan, I like how you're very kind in your project descriptions. I really enjoy that. I love that we see the project, the software that you have used. However, there is no input on the topic of if this project is actually commercial or a personal exercise of yours. If it is an exercise, you can gladly add some backstory as to why you decided to do it, for example. As for the image itself, it has a nice evening look to it. I enjoy it. So overall, a decent presentation, I would say. Modeling wise, let's just open the image to take a better look at it. Modeling wise, I like the details on the house facade, or it's also those framings here that we have on the terrace and on the main facade here. But it's like that apart from the sculpting on the house, everything else seems to be very, very rudimentary. Like, take a look at this walkway, for example, and the ramp here. Let's hope that the people who live there won't buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, because they will very soon have no front bumper anymore. And generally, if you take a look at this is just like a poly object that is just being quickly done, and it just lacks more detail and love to it. When it comes to the surrounding walls, for example, these walls, they are just boxes. I don't see any etika. Normally walls like this have some kind of a finish that protects them from rain or snow and so on. It's usually in the form of sheet metal or some stone or whatever. But yeah, this is, in the moment, there is none of this visible here. Also, this railing here appears to be way too low. It's like 40-50 centimeters at the moment, and as such it doesn't really have its function as a railing. If you trip and try to fall, you won't be able to catch it, you'll just fall over it. Asset wise, I think you have used nice assets, especially when it comes to the trees. Here, when it comes to the plants that you have placed above, you're not Bethesda Softworks. You don't have to have so much clipping in the plants into each other. This doesn't look nice. And when it comes to the Vico that you have placed in the carport, it will profit from an emblem and a license plate. It will just make the scene more realistic. Material-wise, again, I see no structure to your main facade material, which is a pity because you have more or less just this one main material and it has no structure to it, so it looks just like a plain white material. And you see how much of a difference a good material makes, because here you actually changed the facade material for a more glossy one, and you see the nice reflections and how much of a difference it actually makes. So make sure to have some stucco or facade structure material to your main facade shader. The street looks very realistic at first glance, but the longer I look at it, the less I actually manage to figure out what happens there. So it's a bit messy, maybe. I think it's partially due to this very low flat angle and the puddles and so on, but it's a bit difficult to figure out. And when it comes to this area here with the walkway, I'm not sure if these tiles fit this structure properly. If it is done like this, I've never seen it this way, especially on the side. It looks kind of strange and weird to me. Usually there are some curbs or something like this, but maybe there are some locational rules that I don't know about, but still I think it lacks detail. And when it comes to the lighting and framing, I think that the global illumination is nice. The contrast to the sky isn't very strong, but it is given. And these warm areas that you have in the carport and the terrace are actually really nice to look at. So in conclusion, I would say this is a nice project. If you want to step up your game, however, try to be more precise and detailed during your modeling phase, and try to achieve a generally more realistic look on your materials. Again, I will always recommend this. Take an existing architectural project, take one of its shots or more and try to recreate them. You will learn a lot while doing so. Then we have just a quick mention. We had Alfonso with this problem. He wanted to export this 3D mesh from Rhino to Max without losing the texture and the mapping, which didn't work out for him. I suggested FBX or VR Scene. Both solutions didn't work. So if you have any idea about it, maybe write a comment to Alfonso. And then we arrive at the last project for today, which is a project by our friend Mario, who is in the comment. He says, renders I made for a client, hope you like it. The design layout was fully on the client side, but we'll gladly take comments on it on how to improve it. About the first render, composition-wise, at first I didn't have a foreground, but there was a huge empty space next to the dining table that was bothering me. So I came up with this trick that I've seen it before on other renders of using the kitchen island as a foreground, and I like the result. Any feedback is welcome. I use 3ds Max, Corona and Photoshop. So Mario, great description. We know the project type, that it is a commercial one. We know the software that you have used. And most of all, what I really like about it is that we know an issue you came across while working on this project and the solution you found about it. So this is like the optimal way of describing your project, if you ask me, at least the way I wish to find it every time I have to talk about the project. As for the images, they have a nice consistent look to them. They are also nicely diverse, at least the first 3 images. Then you have 3 lighting variations of the same angle, which I wouldn't recommend because it looks like you just copy pasted the same image 3 times, so as if it was a mistake. If you want to do something like this, I recommend just posting this image, and underneath the image in the comments you can maybe share the variations, or maybe you can make a survey and ask the people which version they prefer. But don't do this, because again, the right side looks like it is the same image just 3 times repeated over and over. Now let's take a look at the images one by one. So this is the first scene. This is the area where you had your empty space and you covered it with this vase. Great solution. Also great scene overall. This is the dining area seen from the side. Then we have this close-up on the chair in 3 different lighting variations. So day mood, overcast mood, evening mood, and sunny mood. And then we have this very creative, interesting, nice angle from above. And while usually we start talking about the design of the project, I would say in this case the design works, it also looks fine. The only issue or concern I have with the design is that the living room area is kind of inaccessible. You know, it's either couches or a table or the chairs that are blocking the entry and the access to this living room area. So obviously, if you want to make it functional too, not only pretty looking, you have to get rid of something. Either one of the chairs maybe, or if you want your scene to be lighter, to become a bit more lightweight, I would remove this couch here. Other than that, there is not much to say about the design. It really looks good to me. Modeling wise, the modeling seems solid, the assets are of good quality. You also randomize the positioning of repeated elements, which also always adds a layer of authenticity to someone's work. So you just didn't copy paste instances of this chair, but you move them a bit around so that it looks more natural, and it does. Material wise, the materials look nice, they're distinguishable. Every material has its own optic. This is what I meant as I talked about distinguishable materials with their own specific look. Irina, you see how the wood behaves different than the polished concrete, and then the concrete here, then the floor, then the material on the chairs. Every material is distinct and recognizable as such. The lighting is a nice mix of natural and artificial lighting, a very smooth mix, by the way. And if we go through the shots again, you found a great solution with the depth of field here to cover this empty area. This bottle I would have moved a bit more to the left to cover up the foundation of the table, but this is a nitpick. This doesn't really matter that much. The second shot is very nice too, not much to say about it. It just looks nice. Again, when you have a mirror, consider using a slight bump on it so that it is recognizable as such, and it's not just a perfect representation of what's opposite of it. On the third shot, I like close-ups, as we already talked about it. So I obviously like the sweet depth of field here. Framing-wise, maybe it is, or compositional-wise, it's maybe not the most interesting object because to focus on, because what we look at here mostly is just the backrest of a chair, which again, there are things that are more exciting to look at. I also think that the bust here is a bit distracting, so I think it would look better without it. We can then concentrate more on the chair as a whole, because now this part of it is being covered up. And on the fourth shot, we have this lighting wise. I wouldn't say I have a favorite one. I like the overcast one. I like the evening one. I like this one too, even though it is a bit overexposed maybe, and there isn't such a great contrast here to the background. And the last one is a really greatly framed, very creative shot with nice depth of field and a good focus on the table down here. So in conclusion, dear Mario, I would say that your enthusiasm and your hard work are paying off. I see you're very active, not only here, also in the VW Art Club. You want to learn a lot, you ask a lot of questions, and here are the results, and they're great. So keep it this way. And with this, I see Chia Chi says, thanks for the suggestions, Theodore. You're very great and brave today for talking for 2 hours. Yeah, I'm glad that you're still there. Thanks for sticking around. Also, Chia Chi, thanks for not getting offended or defensive or something, but actually being pragmatic about it. This is something that makes for a really good artist, in my opinion. This is the attitude of a great artist. Mario says, thank you. Your feedback is really valuable. I will take your advice. Helen applauds. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up slowly. I hope to see you next week when we will begin with this project by Alessio. He isn't today with us anymore. He had to leave. So next time we can start with his project. Don't forget that this Thursday, September the 21st, we have our monthly Chaos Campus live show with the one and only Nikos and his awesome guests. This time it's gonna be recent spaces, so don't miss it, especially if you want to ask them something directly. Be there. Also tomorrow, I think there is a very exciting free AMA by Nicholas Buriel from CG Spectrum. He's a great dude, a great educator on the topic of 3D visualization. I don't know if there has been an announcement about it in the group. Maybe he can share it or I can share it. So if you want to check it out, make sure to be there too. And if you don't have any questions, I would say let's wrap it up. Bye, be safe, and all the best. Till next week. Bye.